Welcome to the Loud and Quiet podcast. I'm Stuart Stubbs, and today I'm joined by Jack Barnett, the chief songwriter and leader of the band These New Puritans, who formed in my own hometown of Southend-on-Sea, Essex, which is where Jack now lives once again. And with that being the case, rather than recording this episode in a cold, stark studio space, I asked Jack if he'd fancy talking to me as we walked along Southend seafront and talked about his relationship to the place where we both grew up and the band's forthcoming fifth album, Crooked Wing. Along the way, we do pick up a lot of extra sounds, most of them very pleasant, including birds and the occasional person walking by having a conversation, but there are also two extremely loud cars driving past, which are plainly annoying. Cars are a big part of Southend though, so maybe it's fitting that they're in there, and they are brief and hopefully won't ruin the listening experience too much. Jack's one constant bandmate is his twin brother George, who is These New Puritans drummer and a driving force in the band's visual creative. But Jack and I began our walk outside the Royal Hotel on Southend seafront, which was once the home to a very small but very vibrant music scene around the time that These New Puritans started in 2006. It was in that building that another Southend band, the Horrors, formed at a club night called Junk, which was conceived of and promoted by Horrors bassist Rhys Webb. Before long, other local music fans were putting on similar nights in the basement venue, which is something I remember very fondly, having grown up in a town that until that point offered very little in the way of alternative music. So your first gig was at the Royal Hotel?
Not our first gig, but one of them, yeah.
Was that a Junk night?
Would have been. There were different, various sort of factions there. Junk was one of them. There was Dirty Hearts.
Yep.
There was a couple of others. Yeah, we used to play down there.
It was quite a sweaty room.
It was.
Because it was such a low ceiling in there.
Yeah.
But it was. I remember when that scene happened here, and until that point, I hadn't really. There wasn't anything like that, and I remember going to one of the early Junk ones. I think Rhys was the first to do it with Junk, and then there were, as you say, there were some others that popped up, weren't there? And I did find it was really exciting to suddenly find this other sort of side to Southend, as small as it was, and as much as lots of those people were coming in from like East London and stuff.
Yeah.
It was great.
I think it is quite a remarkable thing to go, in a place like Southend, to have almost automatically 100 people who will come to your gig.
Yeah.
I think we took that for granted, but then you go somewhere else, you go up north to Bolton or something, and there's 5 people, and you think, oh yeah, it's a unusual situation. So
what year would it have been that you played there? 2005? Or a bit earlier?
No. 6, 7?
6 or 7?
Yeah. 7.
And did you... Because that scene, that whole Junk scene and the Horrors coming out and stuff, were you ever sort of involved in it?
Well, we used to play there. I mean, I knew more Kieran. If you know Kieran O'Shea.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great place to play. And a great just atmosphere and momentum that it had. But I think musically we were quite different from a lot of the other stuff.
Yeah.
We had different ideas about how music should be.
I'm in the bus station.
But in terms of actually just the people and everything, yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
But what was great about it as well is it was always there's something about playing underground.
Yeah.
I've always thought it'd be great to be able to, if I could play in the centre of the earth, that would be ideal. But you kind of go in and it's almost like being in a cave. You feel yourself like becoming some kind of, antiquated version of the human.
Yeah.
As you go towards the depths.
Have you ever done any shows in caves? There's that cave called the Devil's Arse, which is in the Peak.
Sounds appropriate.
It's in the Peak District, and they put gigs on there, and Richard Hawley's played shows there and stuff. And it's big, it is just a cave, but it's set up to have concerts in as well and stuff.
The thing is, a lot of the time with these caves, and you get it all over is that they kind of they feel the need to enhance it somehow, and they add like pink and like yellow lights and things like this.
You'd want to just be in the cave.
Whereas you just want to be in the darkness, really.
Yeah.
Maybe just candlelight or something like this.
Yeah. Have you ever seen Ortega play?
I don't think I have, actually.
Although they don't do it in caves, they do tend to have a zero lights policy.
Yeah.
Which does intensify the whole thing. It's quite an incredible effect, really, to just be sat in the dark listening to that music. And even when it's in the Barbican, or whatnot. I
think minimalism in terms of lights is a really good thing. We always used to have it just where, like, okay, this song, because inevitably you're having to explain it to someone. If you don't have your lighting guy, that's obviously someone else you have to pay.
Yeah.
You have to explain it to someone who doesn't really know your intentions.
Your aesthetic.
So sometimes the best thing is to say, all right, this song just have darkness. This song just have one strobe really slow. This song just have red.
What lights did you get back in the Royal Hotel?
We once played there, and I think that might have been the first time we played there, and we didn't have proper amps. So George had found this old like stereo CD player thing, and then rigged it up so that we could plug Tom's bass into it.
Right.
And after about 3 songs, it exploded.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And filled the place with smoke. I think that's probably the best, sound and lights we've ever had.
Yeah. How do you describe Southend to people if anyone ever asks you to describe it as a place?
How do I describe it? Well, it's not exactly the kind of picture postcard vision of England. I think a lot of the time, if you're especially talking to people from other countries, they have a vision of England that is, Yorkshire Dales or cricket pitch with people picnicking and all this kind of thing. It's not really that. It's a different version of England, but it has its own qualities, I think.
I remember when I grew up here, and obviously, when you grow up somewhere, you don't know anywhere different. You just know it as for what it is. I remember I went to university, and I was so proud to be from Southend. I still am, really, but I remember bringing people back to visit in the summer and stuff, and then they all told me how shit it was. And it was like, oh, I thought this was paradise,
Well, I think it's not just some anonymous shit town. It has definitely its own character.
Yeah.
Because you're by the sea, you've got as we can see, you've got the amazing mud.
A lot of mud overlooking the estuary. The tide is out.
And you've got the industry and the concrete, and you've got the marshes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of contrast to it.
So you're back here now. You grew up here, and then you've lived away though, haven't you? You haven't been here the whole time.
Yeah. Very much like Odysseus. Is it Odysseus?
Yeah.
No, I've been all around. But I moved to near here 6 months ago.
Yeah. What made you come back?
I don't know, really, space. It just needed more space for music, more for studio and stuff like this.
Yeah.
And
where else have you had a base?
I lived in Germany for 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. Lived in London on and off for a while. Spent some time in Athens last year.
What was Athens like as a place? Because hasn't Athens
got... It's not too different to Southend High Street, really. It's like a lot of concrete. Yeah, and again, it's not a traditionally beautiful place, but it's got an atmosphere to it.
Yeah.
And also I think it's much more... The thing with London is that it's really... Strangeness is being squeezed out. Strangeness is at a premium. And Athens still has strangeness to it. Southend still has strangeness to it. I'm sure lots of places do, but it's kind of an endangered species that's been preserved.
Athens has got quite a vibrant arts and music scene, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very small world.
Right.
That's what I realised, is you meet someone, every other person knows each other.
And did you whilst you were there, how long were you there for?
I tried to stay away from the art and music world, really.
Did you? Do you generally do that?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean...
Because I've always felt like these New Puritans, even though you came up at a certain time with lots of other bands like the Horrors here, and I've always felt like you've been doing your own thing, and
Yeah.
Have you ever felt like, I mean, do you feel that, and is that like an intentional thing?
That's just always our kind of natural mode was to plough our own furrow for good or ill. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a very Southend thing, is self-invention in a way, or self-reliance.
So when you were in Athens...
I just kind of hid away. I just went, I found this little suburb up in the hills and just stayed there. It's like paradise.
Yeah.
Really.
Do you like that? You like being left alone, left to your own devices a bit?
I suppose so.
But when you were young, like teenager, did you find people who were into the same things as you? Because the one thing that, you know, is often said about Southend, I think fairly as well, is like I was saying about junk turning up and suddenly this whole community popping up, almost felt like from nowhere. It's not really considered a place of great culture. At the time when I was a teenager, everyone liked the same thing. And it was hard to find people that necessarily liked the things you liked if you didn't like chart music and commercial dance music.
But I think that's a good thing, really. I think that does you good. If you have everything on a plate, then I don't think that's always the best way to be.
Yeah.
So it's good if you have to work hard to make something of your own, I think. Like if you're in London, it's all on your plate, you've got all this history, everything's there. Whereas there, there isn't so much. There is stuff, but it gives you, it's a space, there's an opportunity to make what you want to make and make the place into what you want it to be.
So at what point did you start taking music, quote unquote, seriously?
From quite an early age, really. Like I started writing songs when I was 6 or 7 years old. There was one thing where my mum had taped an old thing of Top of the Pops, and I watched it, and it was Captain Beefheart doing Upon the My Oh My, and Sparks doing This Town Ain't Big Enough for Both of Us, and those two things were just blew me away.
What did you make of the look of Sparks?
I just thought it was incredible. I loved it. I loved everything about it, and it just seemed like this other vision of the world and how the world could be. I still think that song is it's you know, on the surface it might be kind of playful and a bit kind of like ironic or something like that, or there's this amazing darkness or strange tone to it that is so hard to define and so otherworldly. I think it's incredible.
Have you ever met Sparks?
No.
Is it something you'd want to do? Would you want to work with a duo like that?
Yeah, does that make me Ron Mao and George is the other one, whatever his name is?
Yeah.
I don't know, I never think about meeting people really. In a way it's better to just have people be, like if you really admire someone, it's better, they're more useful to you if they are your musical conscience. You can just imagine them and what they might do or think in a certain way. Or just the incarnation of that. That's more useful than actually a human being that you can talk to.
So that performance, that Top of the Pops performance of Beefheart and Sparks...
I don't know, I mean, I just always liked music. I did guitar lessons. I did about 2 guitar lessons at primary school. And then I just thought, it's actually easier just to play the songs myself than to learn it. And from that point, I just did music, and I knew that's where I was at home. And then wrote songs, and my older brother got a 4-track from Argos catalogue, and then I basically just learned how to use that one. Maybe I was about 10 or 11. So I was sort of, in a way, I became like his session musician. He would make music, and I would come in and be the bassist. So that was almost my musical education, was being a session musician when I was about 10.
Okay. What music was he making? What was he getting you to play?
I guess it was sort of, I mean, he was into Radiohead, Massive Attack.
Okay.
You know,
should go down
I
this
guess
one?
alternative rock, you might call it.
Right.
But always different, you know, trying different things. And then I'd come in and just listen to the song, like lay down, you know, some solid gold, and then
pick up your royalty check.
Yeah, exactly.
And then off you went.
Yeah.
Does your brother still make music? Your older brother?
No, not really. He was an incredible songwriter, actually. I think that's also the great thing of having an older brother or older sibling, is that they kind of sort of done some of the work for you, found good things, and then play you them. Like he would play us whatever, Velvet Underground, Captain Beefheart, and he'd just know what we would like and play it to us.
So that's your older brother, and obviously George is your twin brother.
Yeah.
And was George into were you two just into the same stuff always?
Not quite. I think, I was more into, I loved the Velvet Underground, Captain Beefheart. Then there's when we found sort of Aphex Twin and things like that, electronic stuff. He was more, I remember him listening to like Massive Attack, Bjork, stuff like that.
And at what point did you and George start making music together?
So I would write songs and then I started recording them, and I would get him to play, like he had a little pair of bongos, things like that, play the drums along. So it was all very, very DIY. It was like one karaoke microphone that we'd hang over this beam and going into the 4-track. And eventually you got a drum kit, and then,
Thank you for listening to this preview of the Loud and Quiet podcast. Hopefully it's been enough to tempt you to sign up to receive all unedited episodes of the show, past and present. To unlock the full episode that you're currently listening to and to gain access to all future and past episodes, sign up at loudandquiet.substack.com. It costs less than £1 per week and helps us continue to make the show. That's loudandquiet.substack.com.